Hi, welcome to It's So Friday. I'm Elizabeth and we're here at Robert Kaufman and we are going to be quilting today. All right, today I'm so excited. We are going to be making the Daydream quilt featuring Marmalade Dreams fabric by Valori Wells. You can see the Daydream quilt pattern right behind me here. And it looks a little complicated, but I promise it's not that hard. This is a pre-cut friendly, template friendly, just friendly pattern. It's just very nice. It's going to make you happy. It's a great beginner quilt pattern for someone who's maybe done like squares and maybe they want to try something that looks a little more complicated, but you're not quite ready to go to like half square triangles or rectangles or anything too nuts yet. This is going to give you the basics with templates, and it's going to make you feel really cool too. So first things first, you can download the pattern in the link up in our profile. If you'd like to get the kit or the fabric, you can also link in our profile to all the different shops that are carrying this fabric for this quilt. Okay, once you have downloaded the pattern, you will know you have the right pattern because it looks like this and it says Daydream Quilt. Looks like this, looks like that, says Daydream, it's great. But it's not even a daydream, it's real life. You're gonna make this quilt, it's exciting. Okay, now one of the greatest things about quilts like this is when you don't have a lot of time but you have a lot of deadlines, you can use a pre-cut, which is a handy fabric that has already been cut for you. So pre-cut, woohoo! All right, these are 2.5-inch strips by the width of fabric. We call them roll-ups. And so what happens is when you unroll a roll-up, you get this really long piece of fabric, and it is usually folded in half like this. And so it looks very handy. It's super fun to unroll them. I have no need to unroll this one, but I just want to show you live on camera because it's really fun to unroll a roll up. So first you get to take off this piece of fabric, paper, and now you have this rubber band that's keeping everything so nicely together. If we take this off, you'll start to see the roll up unfolding, and it's great fun to lay it on your table and go, whee! And then you can flip it over and just look at how beautiful that collection looks all together. Now, don't unroll your roll-up until you're ready to start quilting, because let me tell you, once you unroll a roll-up, you can never get it re-rolled again. It's the beauty of a roll-up. It's just, they look so wonderful and so pretty, and use them right away. All right, so once you've printed out your pattern, you'll see in the back that you have 3 template pages. So your very first template. Oh, and if you've never worked with templates before, something very important to note, there's a little box here in the corner. It says 1-inch box for scale. It's not just saying that because it's fun and pretty and likes to be a little box on the page. That's how you make sure your template is the right size. If you accidentally print your pages to scale or like fit to page or something kooky, and that box is anything but 1 inch, your quilt will be all kinds of crazy and won't work. So make sure that you check it. And the way that you check it, let's go to an up-close view and I'll show you how to check it. So you have your 1-inch box for scale. You just want to take any one of your rulers, it doesn't have to be a fancy one, and just lay it directly over. And so as you'll notice, this is printed incorrectly, but that's okay because these aren't the templates I'm using for today's episode. I have already printed my templates. So I have a different template here, and you can see it's actually going to be bigger. So here's a good example of what will happen if your 1-inch box is not to scale. That wasn't done intentionally, clearly, to show you that lesson. So you can see this back paper is the one that's not printed to scale, and this paper is the one that is printed to scale. So while that box looks like it's not very much, and you might be tempted to say, it's okay, I can work with this template, please note that is like a whole 1/4 inch off. And that would impact your quilt. So make sure that you print your templates at the correct scale. Let's go back, take a look, see. All right, that was definitely done intentionally as a learning lesson, not because I wasn't paying attention. It's good though, because that happens all the time. It's always important to check your boxes for scale. Hands up if you've done that before. Okay. Oh, and if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comment box, and my lovely assistants here, IT tech support / boss, will also read out the comments to me and let me know, and I'll try my best to answer them. Okay. There are some tools that you're going to need aside from your roll-up. You'll also need the additional yardage that the pattern calls for, and I think it's very helpful to have, well, it is important to have a rotary cutter, so have that on hand. But one of my surprise fun things to have on hand for this episode is like a handheld vacuum. Or if you don't have a handheld vacuum, I think it's worthwhile to have a regular vacuum close by. And I'm going to show you why. Okay, let's look up close real quick at this template. The right one, not the bad one. Let's just throw that right away. Okay. When you look at your roll-up strip, you might be thinking, I don't know if I can get all of the pieces that I need out of the roll-up. And you would be wrong. You can get all of the template pieces out of this roll-up, but you do need to cut it correctly. So, first things first, each roll-up strip will yield you 5 template B pieces. So, there are some pieces that call for 10 template Bs, but you only have 2 of these strips. That is enough. You just have to be very, very careful. All right, when you lay your template out on your roll-up, you'll see that there is this like extra bit of fabric. And that is because their pinked edges don't want to cut into your 2.5-inch strip, but you want to cut that off, otherwise the accuracy is going to be kind of all over the place. And so what I like to do is, and I'm going to actually do the cutting on a big screen, but I'll show you here first. I like to take my longer ruler and line up the folded edge here with some dots or a line so that I know that it's straight. And once I know that that's straight, I can see where I'm going to need to cut here and on the other side once I flip it. Now, on the pieces where you need 10 of your templates, you do want to make sure that this piece at the edge is lined up straight, because that way when you open the piece, you don't have it going like at a V because it wasn't even here. On the pieces where you only need like, I don't know, like 8, that's okay because you won't need that anyway. But you do need to trim this off. So let's take this back over to our main table. Let's move our little vacuum real quick. And I'm going to show you, move everything. All right, so repeating what I just did on the smaller up close table, you'll see I'm going to just cut that 2.5 inches or not cut, I'm going to cut the 2.5-inch strip true to size by cutting off those little bits of fabric. Okay. Now you get this little piece of fabric that likes to like leave threads everywhere, and sometimes it's okay because it's all connected, but sometimes you're literally just cutting off these like itty bitty pieces of fabric and they end up everywhere. And oh, close your rotary cutter when you put it down. And that's where my handy dandy vacuum comes into play, because I was at home trying to move all these things and they were falling all over the table and they were falling all over the dog and all over the carpet, and it just was no good. So I took my vacuum, I just vacuumed right along my ruler before I even moved it, and then I didn't have any pre-cut trash like from my strip. So I'm just, now that I've cut that side, I'm just going to rotate it around and cut the other bit. And on this side, there's less, it's just like all these little dusty things. And I'm just going to vacuum them up too. And now I have a clean strip, and my work surface is pretty clean. But if you have any lingerers, you just, it was very exciting. I was having a really good time with that the other day. Okay, and now you're ready to cut your template. So let's go back up close and I'll show you cutting the template. Now, an important thing to note about cutting these templates is that you will want to keep your strip folded in half with the wrong sides together. And what you want to do is start on the edge with the selvage and line your template up with the 2 edges. Then take your ruler and with the edge of your ruler lined up with the edge of your template, just go ahead and give it a cut. Now move this one aside and close your rotary cutter. Now you still have to cut this side. So the easiest thing to do is just slide your ruler, being careful not to shift your template, and slide this ruler now so that it's right along the edge of your template piece. Now you can move your template and make that cut. I learned that tip from Anita Grossman Solomon. She actually says if you aren't sure, you could line up your ruler along this edge and then butt up another ruler over here, and then you can move everything and just do the cut. Okay, but you're not quite done. Let me press this real quick. Don't go away. I'm back. Okay. You see these little dog ears that are cut out? Ooh, if you move, make sure that you get your pieces back right sides together. You do want to cut out those dog ears, and I'll show you why those are super helpful later. Now, you could measure and cut, but I just like to leave my template in place and just kind of go, hello, goodbye. Hello, goodbye. All right, so now these little dog ears are gone. You could take your vacuum and vacuum those up, or you could just throw them away. Depends on how you're feeling. Okay, you'll see on this piece of the roll-up, you do still have a little bit of these little bumps from where you cut your pinked edges off, but you have a straight edge also at the top, and that's what you're going to use to line up your pieces. And that's okay, as long as it doesn't like eat in too much, then you're not going to lose any fabric in your seam allowance. So when you've cut this way, where you have, oh, I did a bad job cutting there. That's okay, we're not gonna use this piece. Be really careful so that that doesn't happen to you, because you wanna make sure if you accidentally have your pieces shifted like this when you cut, then you're going to lose that. So maybe we just don't use that piece. Bad example. All right. Let's make sure it's actually lined up. That's so nice. Okay. Same thing. Okay. You want your pieces to be back to back, because what that gives you is a template B and then a template B reversed. And that is what's going to let you have pieces that are going this way and going this way in your quilt pattern. So you'll see that if you were to lay these out right sides up, you're getting two different angles. And that's how you get that cool look in the quilt, and it's still really easy because you're just doing the one cut. All right, let's go back to the main screen here. All right, now we talked a lot about, well, we didn't talk a lot about it, but we did cover that it's important to cut off those little dog ears. And here's why. When you have your pieces and you've started lining them all up, it can be kind of tricky to figure out where you line up this piece if you have no edge cut off. But with this little bit cut off, it shows you where you line it up at the top and the bottom to be able to sew accurately. So let's go back up close and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so on this piece, I want this purple piece to attach to this green piece. And first you need to be careful, because if you accidentally have it flipped this way and you piece that together, you're going to have this really interesting angle that was not what you wanted. So make sure you have them correctly laid out. And I like to lay them all out in a row so that I know I'm getting the right color order that I'd like. And now you're just going to lay this piece over, right sides together. And you'll see that the top where you cut out that little dog ear, that's where you're going to line up at the top of the previous piece. And the bottom here matches up perfectly with the bottom of the previous piece. Now, if you're not a confident, just hold it and go person yet, you can also add a couple pins. Personally, I hate pinning, but it's up to you. And that just is going to keep it there. So now let's go ahead and take this over the sewing machine, and we're going to just sew along this edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Welcome back. We are going to go and sew at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And sometimes your feed dogs might try and pull the fabric into your machine. Sometimes when I'm working at like an angle like this, that happens. So I find it pretty helpful to just keep a little piece of scrap around. I use these as leaders. And what that means is that before I start my sewing, I just start on that piece of fabric so that my machine is already kind of hooked into something. Then I line up the piece that I need for my seam, and I just start sewing with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay. Then, using a sharp pair of clippers, you just clip that little thread between your leader and the piece of work that you have. And now you have a piece that looks like this. So if you look from your straight seam, you've got something going this way and something going this way, and it looks a little kooky, but don't worry, because as soon as you open this up to press, it's going to go in a straight line again. So just take that over to your pressing station, give it a quick little press. Okay, and now you have strips like this. Now you'll see in this quilt that there's these strips of color, and you have seven bars plus a middle section, then another 7 bars, and then there's a side piece on each one. So for example, here's your 7 bars with your side piece, And now we have our 7 bars, and we want to add another side piece. So what you want to do is match your color layout to make sure that you have the cool design going. And with this side piece, again, you want to make sure that as you look at it, let's look up close because it's easier to show you this way. When you're looking at it here, you want to lay it out and you can see it in a straight line. If you have it twisted again like this, it's going to do some crazy corner. That's not what you want. So lay it out correctly like this and fold it over again so that the little dog ear is matching at the top and that the dog ear, or at the flat bottom is lining up here. And I'm not going to pin this, but if you want to pin, I would just add 2 little pins, but now I'm going to take this over and I'm going to sew on this 1/4 inch line. Okay, so here we go. Oh, I didn't use my leader, and then look what happened. My machine unthreaded itself. Thank you for that. It just wanted to show off that it has cool threading capability live on air. It is pretty fast and really easy, and I do really like that feature about this machine. And again, look at me not using my leader and under. I'm like, not, it's one of those things. Do as I say, it's going to make your life a whole lot easier, but sometimes you just forget, and that works too. All right. So now we've sewn this 1/4 inch seam. You have your piece looking like this. And remember, when you open it up, you get that nice straight line. So we're going to give that a quick press. And when you're working with a mix of linens and cottons, it can be really helpful to use, I like to use flatter. It's a spray starch alternative. Sometimes the linen can be a little bit trickier to press because it has a little bit more of a mind of its own. And that really just helps smooth it all out. All right, so now you have these 2 pieces, and you can see that the stripes are going in different directions. And you're going to lay them out. This is definitely a project that's great to work in a long strip, and it's nice to see it on the table so you make sure that you're not sending something a different direction that you don't want. And now we're just going to connect that triangle piece to the middle. So laying out, let's look up close, and we'll see how, if we lay this out, I'm going to just move these because we don't need them. Lay this out here, and this one also. And now we are going to take this whole piece and match up that notch and the notch down here. And let's go ahead and give that a sew. Give that a sew. I don't think I've ever said that before. Right. Okay. So we've gone ahead and sewed that, and now we have this great connector piece, and we're going to just go ahead and do that with the other side as well. So matching up the notches like I've been showing you, and ready to sew. Okay. All right, so now you have this long strip, and once you get into the rhythm of this, it goes very quickly. Whoa, this is so long. All right, you have a long strip of fabric like this. Go ahead and press that last seam that you just did, and I'm going to give it a little bit of flatter. It doesn't really matter if you want to press one way or another. I kind of just press whatever way works better for me that day, and not open. I don't like pressing open. I press to the sides. But you can see my seams are, I'll show you up close. My seams are kind of being pressed a bunch of different directions, and that's okay. Like some of these are going here, that one's going that way. This one is going this way and out, and it's okay. You have this nice thing and it looks great. Okay, now the next thing that you want to do after you've assembled all your strips, you're going to repeat that process for all of the rows that you're ready to put together. And the next thing that you are going to be doing is joining 2 of your long strips together and matching your points so that you get these nice crisp points in your pattern. And the way that you do that is you, well, you can see my seams here, how they kind of go together, and it looks so nice, in my opinion, if I do say so myself. All right, So you would be lining up like this. Oh, I was like, I did something wrong because this is not supposed to go there, but it's because this turns. Okay, I followed the picture, so much better. All right. Okay, so once I get them all lined up, I'm going to just flip one row onto the other. And the best way to do this is pinning. I know, I don't like it, but it is what you have to do. Okay, so what I'm wanting to do is line these. It's easier than lining up if the angles were going a different direction because you can kind of nest them a bit. So I'm going to want to just butt this gray piece up to the color here and then go ahead and give it a little pin. And with these blue ones, since they're going the same direction, I'm going to line up the blue on the seam and give it a pin. And you're going to repeat that all along your strip. Okay. So many pins. So many pins. If you didn't care if your points were totally perfect, you could not pin. I should note that at this point, well, let's go to the big screen and I'll tell you this. Okay. In the pattern, it gives you the instruction to square up your blocks. So if you've been sewing these and this is your first time sewing templates and it's going a little crazy and you have, some that are maybe a little bit longer at the top and not quite lined up perfectly, you can take your entire strip, and maybe I should do that since it is in the pattern. So I'll unpin all that pinning I just did. All right. I forgot about that step because I didn't do that step when I did this piece. So it's one of those things. If you're feeling like your patchwork strips are lining up and you don't need to square up because your line is already straight at the top, you will be totally fine skipping the square up step and just sewing them together. This didn't have that. Now I really hope that if I square it up, it's still going to line up with that, but we'll find out. Okay, so to square up, you want to line your fabric, like fold your fabric in half, like when it was rolled up, and make sure that it is lined up correctly top and bottom. And now, taking a long ruler, which this ruler is 24 inches and it's not quite long enough, but we're going to make it work. This is a 24-inch by 6-inch ruler though, so that is nice. I'm just going to line up the edge with the folded edge of my fabric, and I'm going to just cut it. See how it goes. All right. When I get towards the end of my ruler, I don't cut all the way off. I stop cutting a little bit before, and then I slide my ruler down. I line up the edge of the ruler with the line that I was cutting so that I know that I'm kind of following on that same line, and I cut off my strip of patchwork. All right. Then I flip it, and I do the same thing, except this time I know that this ruler is 6 inches. Sometimes I recount just to make sure, because it would be my luck to be like, this is a 6-inch ruler, and then it would be like 5 inches and not a 6-inch ruler. All right. And go ahead and cut again. Okay. So you can see from what you cut off that it gives you room to make a little bit of little mistakes and still have a really clear, clean, beautiful line of patchwork that you can then attach to the rest of your quilt. Let's see if it works. All right, I'm going to take my big piece over here and I'm just going to try that pinning again. So much pinning. I think it'll still work. It should still work. It's totally going to work. The big thing is to be consistent. So if you are squaring up, square up all your panels, and if you're not, don't square up any of your panels because it's not going to line up. But it's totally not. I shouldn't have done it. You know what I'm going to do? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. So If you didn't square up some and then you squared up the next one and then you want to fix it because you're doing this thing like live on camera or something, tell you what to do. Square up the side that's about to meet with that side, but not the top side. No one's going to know about the top one. Just don't tell them. It's okay. You can gift this quilt to someone, and if they say anything like, hey, I watched your video and I heard it's not square, you just be like, I've never given you a quilt again. That's all. So, since you were going to square up to 6 inches, but I've already pieced in part of my seam allowance / squared up piece, now I want to square it to 5 3/4, I think. Yeah, 5 3/4. I'm just going to cut off, well, it was 6 1/2. I should have squared it to 6. I'm just going to start by cutting it to 5 3/4 and then see if that works or not. That's kind of how I quilt math. We're just going for it. We'll see. How many of you I mean, this is real life, okay? This is how people quilt at home. They're like, well, that didn't really work, but no one will know. Be consistent. Okay, I did some squaring up. Let's see if that helps. Fingers crossed. It fixed it, yay! And so you could tell right away because when I was lining up the pieces in the center, it was way off. When I made it work on one side, it was like another 1/2 inch or something going the other direction on the other side. It was not what you want when you say, look, I did this thing, it was beautiful. Yeah. Unless you're going for improv, and then that's a look. And you could do it, and you could just be like, oh, that was improv. It's okay. Yeah. Improv would probably also frown on you using the ruler to cut everything, though. And I really like my rulers. I like to measure and kind of, I don't know. It's important. Commit one way or the other. Just do your thing. All right, I am pinning. I love it. Pinning is totally the thing that the reason I quilt, so I can pin. If you've been with us any amount of Sew Fridays, including this one, you know that's not true. I have managed to stick myself every single time I have pins. The last time I brought my own pin cushion to do some pinning on an episode, I was carrying it back to my desk after sewing, and I walked into a pallet, because that's very much right up my alley, and I was holding the pin cushion. I whacked my hand into this thing, and I shoved all the pins into my hand, and it was really unpleasant, and that's why pins are not my friend. So. And even when I have this like this, I'll manage to pick up this piece in a way where I definitely get stabbed by a pin. Yeah, it's, pins are a hazard. They're just, you need them. All right, once you have your piece pinned, you're just going to go ahead and sew that long seam with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So we're just going to go for it. All righty. And make sure as you get to your pins that you pause, take the pins out. If you run over your pins with your sewing machine, it's not great for the pins. It's not great for your machine. If the pin comes flying out and hits you, it's not great for you. So, it's just words of wisdom. Stop sewing before you hit the pins. Alrighty. I will be real bummed if this doesn't work out and it doesn't line up after all that, but I think it's going to line up, so I'm feeling fairly confident. We'll see. Okay. Almost there. And as I go, I'm just making sure my seam allowances are staying whatever direction I'd push them so that they don't do anything crazy. And that's just going to help the quilt lay nice and flat. Okay. And if one piece ends up being a little longer at the end, I think that's okay. because I'm going to trim up just a little bit at the end. So like if my end pieces don't work out quite the way I want them to, but everything else looks great, I'm just gonna call it a win. All right, so let's look, because this is a good, okay. So these seams all look pretty great. These ones, I clearly lost it a little bit, but you know what? The beauty of this quilt pattern is that when it's up on the wall or on the bed and it's quilted, you're not going to notice that so much. And a lot of that is likely because I just didn't pin well enough, because they line back up right over here and look great. So now I'm going to just take this over and press it. Okay, we are gonna press, press, press. So when I like to press these long seams, I like to try and kind of finger press originally first and just make sure the seam is going the same direction, kind of the length of where I'm going to press. I get it kind of laid out, and then I take a little bit of flatter and I just go, it's my sound effect for flatter, and then I give it a little press. And then I scoot the whole thing down a little bit and just finalize that little bit of press. Okay, and then I show you how beautiful it looks, because look at that. Okay, so the lessons to be learned on this quilt pattern are: print your templates to scale, decide if you're going to square up in advance and then be consistent about it, and have a good time, because it's fun to sew with roll-ups. This comes together super quickly. You could add or subtract rows to make it longer or shorter, depending. So if you are like, this was so much fun, but I want a smaller baby quilt, I'm just going to end right about here, you could do that and you'd have a lovely little square baby quilt. Or you can decide that you want to combine it with extra roll-ups and do more, and you totally could. So a great way, like if you decide you love this pattern, you want to make it doubly long, all you would have to do is, instead of adding this end piece here, you could do another middle piece and add that middle piece here to the side, and then add more rows of color. So it's really easy to adapt to what you want to make, and that's what quilting's all about. So thank you for joining us for It's So Friday for Daydream. Hope you guys all had a good time. I sure had a good time. I'm going to be back here next week, if you can believe it, and we're going to have another It's So Friday episode. I think next week we're working on friendly faces. So I hope you'll join us, and have a great long weekend, everyone.